Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another live stream right here on Freewell Photos. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the latest release of ON1 Photo RAW 2026.4. It was just announced today or released today. We know that it was announced a little while ago and they decided to hold off on releasing it until today. We were supposed to get it last month and now we're getting it right now. And I'm excited for it. And, I kind of want to share some thoughts about where I think ON1 is going because I think that it's helpful to know that. Now, with that being said, I do have some notes right here, but I want to just go ahead and jump right into the computer because I want to take a look at the article that was released with this. So let's go ahead and jump over to the computer here. There we go. And so inside of the description box, you will have access to this link in this article. So if you want to follow along, by all means, go ahead and do that. But if not, I'm just going to hit some of the highlights in this particular article. All right. And so 2026.4, it was just released. And one of the headline features inside of the 2026.4 release is Restore AI. And we're going to take a look at that in today's live stream. So be ready for that. But I want to kind of set the landscape of where this new feature exists. And that is inside of ON1 Photo RAW Max. All right. Now, a while ago, I probably would have said, hey, you only need to get the base version. Now, what I'm starting to see with ON1, and I'll give some deeper thoughts about this later, but what I'm starting to see with ON1 is they are truly separating the max version from the base version, and the Restore AI is built into ON1 Photo RAW Max. So if you want that capability, you have to have the max version. All right. So that's the first landscape piece that I wanted to share. The second one, I'm skipping over all of this stuff. You can go and download this from your account. That's all that this is really saying. But the piece that I really want to show you is right here. And it's talking about what can Restore AI actually do. And there's some really good information in here, just explaining like, hey, this is what to expect when you're using it. Don't use it so much where people details or the face details of a person's face are important, which, are typically always important. But if you're restoring an image, maybe you have a little bit lower tolerance. Again, we'll take a look at how that actually works out here once we get into the software. But the one thing that I want to call out about Restore AI is, unlike all of the other AI tools that are being launched or being used inside of ON1 on your computer, or let me rephrase, all of the other AI tools work local to your machine, meaning you have to have a computer that's powerful enough in order to use the AI tools that ON1 has available. Well, with this new version of, and specifically only for the Restore AI, your images have to go to a cloud server. All right. Now, I haven't read any user agreements on how that all works out, but it does require an internet connection because you have to send your images off to an ON1 server so this AI tool can work. Now, what's cool about this is it is completely built in and usable by the ON1 Photo RAW Max, and that's the standalone one-time purchase. Or if you're on a subscription model with ON1, which is the ON1 Photo Studio, that includes the max version of ON1, you can use the ON1 Photo RAW Restore AI module without any credits. All right. There's no tokens or credits. So if you buy it one time outright, you still get access to using the Restore AI. And so that's something I really wanted to make sure that, we covered, because one of the questions I got when Restore AI was launched was, well, Chris, how many credits is this going to cost me to run? And so I'm glad that, it's a single sentence. It's pretty far down here in the article overall. but it solves or at least answers that question. Now, let's go ahead and jump into On1. And you can see I have a few photos here. Now, you're probably wondering, like, well, Chris, I downloaded the new version of On1, and you are missing a critical aspect of the 2026.4 release, and that is the home screen. And so we will back up and look at that here in a little bit, but I want to get into the headline thing because I think this is the big feature that everyone was looking for answers of. How does this work and what do you got to do and all of that. So that's why I'm starting here. All right. Now, I have a few images here that I want to work with. So the first one is exactly what you would expect for a restore program to be able to do. And that is, I have this image right here where it's all messed up and I just want to see how well On1 restores it. And so before I set it into the restore, let's just go ahead and jump into edit on this image. And I want to crop it down to just the boundaries of the image. So we'll press the letter C, and I'm going to do a freeform just to make this easier on myself. And we'll pull this into here. I don't know why this is working so weird. It's probably my computer just needs a restart, but that's okay. There we go. And I'll put that in there. You may not need to do this for yours. I'm just doing it because I only want to give On1 the information it needs in order to restore it. All right. And so I'll hit the blue check mark. That's now there. I'm going to commit this. We're back in the grid, and you can see I now have that full image ready to go. To access Restore AI, what you'll do is come over here to the right bumper, which for everyone should be exposed by default. And I love that they did that because I always left mine out anyway. All right. Here at the very top, you'll see a new icon, and that is the Restore AI. Let's click it. And it will load us into the Restore AI workspace, all right, or module. And you can see it's doing a whole bunch of stuff right here. And this is all happening in the cloud. Now, this is the final version, or at least the version that it rendered while it was in the cloud. And I'll be honest, this is a photo of my wife's family. And so I'm not quite sure if it restored their faces to what they look like. But let's take a look at the before and the after. The before and the after. Overall, I think that this looks pretty good. But again, one of the things that I guess Patrick was saying in the article is when it comes to restoring images with faces, you kind of have to pay attention to the results that it's giving. All right. Now, ultimately, if I just wanted to restore an image and say like, look, this has been restored, then I could say that this is good. But again, I'm not familiar with the people in this photo. I know who they are. At least by name, but I don't know what they look like when they were kids because this is the only photo of them that exists when they were kids. Now, as this technology gets better, I think we're going to start to see that work out. But right now, I would say that this did not restore the faces to the extent of the individuals. Now, what's cool here is what On1 does with their AI tools, and I greatly appreciate, is they give us the ability to kind of fine tune what the AI is doing. All right. And so with these faces, if I come down here to face recovery, we're going to come back to the adjustments because I am skipping over some big parts here, but I want to kind of talk about the faces thing because once you know the limitations, it's a lot easier to know how to use the tool. All right. And so right here where it says face recovery, if you click it, it'll expand. And then I get this thing that says adjust faces. And so when I click this, I get these green boxes over each of the people. Now, if I want to blend the AI generated face with the original face, I have a little slider down here, and it's kind of like a transparency slider. The challenge here is you do all this work to restore the image, and then you want to bring back the original face in the photo that wasn't the photo that you were trying to restore from. It just kind of defeats the purpose. And so the reason why I wanted to show you this is, yeah, you can kind of fine tune this, but this isn't quite ready there. All right. But everything else in the restoration process here, it didn't do a very good job with this piece here, but you can clean that up maybe using generative erase or the perfect eraser. You can get rid of this big water stain or paper stain. But ultimately, does a pretty good job here. All right. So that's the limitation as far as it goes with, restoring faces. But let's see what it can do when we start working with like landscapes and things of that sort, where faces aren't a big issue. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit the gray X because I don't need to commit that. And then we're going to come over here to this landscape image. And I'm just going to go ahead and open it in Restore AI. Now, this is a raw file. The beautiful thing about this is you can also use this on JPEG images. All right. Now, with a JPEG file, you may need to do a little bit more work or whatever it may be. So let's take a little bit deeper dive at how you can use Restore AI to really bring back some of the information that was initially lost in your file. So first things first, we have 4 models that can be ran in the cloud. You have Auto, which is the one that I personally like to run because I think that to me, it gives me the best results. But you can switch between them and choose the one that works the best for you. Faithful is more of a natural look to what was initially in the file, where Auto is going to try and give it a little bit more life and color. And you can see that in the Auto render here, there's more color and more vibrancy, more energy in the photo. Whereas with Faithful, it's just a little blah, in my opinion. Now, that's nothing against ON1 or the model. It's just not, for me, the way that I like to, I guess, work with my images. But aside from the restore model, we have this generations thing, which I'll come back to because that's actually kind of cool. And one of the things that I want to touch on about the future of what we're going to see with ON1, or at least what I think we'll see with ON1. All right. Now, here are the adjustments. And when I mentioned, or what I mentioned earlier about ON1 giving us the tools to kind of mix the AI generated material alongside the original material, this is what I was talking about. And I love that ON1 does this for us because the goal with any AI tool is not a one-click solution thing, even though that's very attractive and that, is a marketing buzzword, one-click edits and stuff like that. Once you start getting into photo editing, you want more control than just a single click. All right. And with ON1, you do get that control. And so that's what these adjustments are for. And if you're familiar with the color match tool that's inside of the effects module of ON1, well, the tone correction and color correction are essentially the tone and the color sliders that are found inside of that tool, where if you pull this all the way up, I can start getting that color correction in there, right? And if I move the tone correction, this is going to be the underlying tone from the initial image. The further to the left is going to give me more of the original image. And the further to the right is going to give me more of what ON1's AI generative tool is deciding, and adding into this image. That's all that you really have to know about that. You find a mix between the two that you enjoy, and then you can move along. Now, what you'll notice is I have this. This doesn't look as well defined. It's a little pixelated, and there's an option down here. I'm skipping over a few items here because we will get to those, but the elephant in the room is, well, Chris, this doesn't actually look very sharp or clear. And the reason for that is when I need to click on it, so that way the resize AI and all of those tools can kind of render. And I don't know why it's not rendering now, because it should have. And we'll let that think itself through. But again, this is happening on the cloud, and I've only had this for about an hour and a half playing around with it, trying to understand how all of this works. So I'll definitely do a more deep dive video explaining the tool and some of the use cases. But right now, what it's doing is doing the resize thing, and I should get at the end of this loading section here, I should get a more refined and detailed version of the AI generation for this image. But what I really want to show you is that it recovers all of the highlight information that was lost in this photo initially. And so now I think it's actually rendered. So if I back this up just a bit, because I don't necessarily need to be in at 100%, it's probably because I'm streaming and this is going to the server at the same time. So bear with me as I kind of work through this. But the so what to all of this is ON1 has given us this little option. All right. If you are looking at your image and you're like, hey, this is really pixelated, what the heck am I getting here? You may want to click this apply resize at all magnifications. Now, I know that ON1, when I watched the A to Z video, Dan did mention that this was designed for, it's turned off by default, but for me, I had turned it on because my computer has a little bit more power and I think that it will be just fine. But essentially, it's a option for those who have a computer that may be a little bit older or may struggle to use some of the features that are built into ON1. Well, this allows you to kind of throttle that refinement or the processing power for your GPU. It allows you to reserve some of that information if you have it turned off. But as soon as you turn it on, then it's going to use more of your GPU to try to render the image. Now, if none of that makes sense to you, then don't worry about it. Just leave it turned off if you think that it's going to make your computer run slower or make the render run slower. And if you think that your computer is strong enough to handle it, well, turn it on and see what happens. All right. It's just a toggle switch. Now, this detail slider is pretty straightforward. You pull it down, things get blurry. You pull it up, things get more sharp. So I can't find a reason to not leave that at 100% right now. I'm leaving mine at 100%. You let me know in the comment section if you would like to lower that or use a lesser value than 100%, or if you found a use case for that. Now, the next section here is the monochrome. And when you click this, it doesn't change anything up here. It just takes away all of the color. And I think that this is really for those scanned type of images. And since I don't really have any true scanned images, I don't know if this is something that I need to use. Again, I've only had this for an hour, so I'm really guessing here, but it makes it go black and white, even though you have a monochrome model that you can use up here. And I guess it just checks that block anyway. So you got a different way of doing that. Now, again, if I'm missing something, please let me know in the comment section because I will never claim to be the most knowledgeable person on all things ON1. I know a lot, but not all things. With that being said, you also have a temperature and a saturation slider, and these work just as you would expect. All right. If you think that, let's go to faithful, where I'm like, hey, you know what? The saturation doesn't quite work here. I find my blend of the color correction, especially if the colors were messed up in the initial image, which we're going to take a look at here in a second, or at least an example of that. Then, you can kind of fine tune this, but then maybe they're still a little dull. And so you'll come over to the saturation slider and you can just pull up on that saturation. And now you have a little bit more saturated photo, as well as if you want to correct the white balance. And this actually does a little bit of a better job than the point system because, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, ON1 uses two methods of applying temperature or white balance to an image. There's the Kelvin scale, which is relatively common, and that's how our cameras kind of measure the white balance when you are shooting the image. And to me, that's my favorite method of applying a white balance correction. However, on JPEGs, it's not really a white balance correction that you're doing or anything because the Kelvin degrees are, or the Kelvin scale is only really for raw files. Once you start working with a file that's not a raw, which will be your CR3s, your NEFs, ARWs, based off of the manufacturer of camera that you're using. But if you're using a JPEG or editing a JPEG or a TIFF or a PNG, you don't get access to the Kelvin scale to modify the white balance. Instead, what you get is this point scale, and that's the second method that ON1 uses. I am not a fan of the point scale inside of the develop module or inside of the local adjustment. I think that when you try to warm something up, it typically gets a little too warm. It's not like a gradual build. But right now, the temperature slider, it isn't like overpowering this image, and I have to crank it up to 40. So maybe they retuned the point scale for temperature. That'll be something I'll have to test in the 2026.4 version overall. Or if this is just because it's working on the cloud, that it's working a little bit differently. And that's why I'm finding it a little bit more enjoyable. All right. But I digress. Let's let me show you how to get this out of the Restore AI module. All right. And to do that, all you got to do is come down here and click the blue check mark. Now, I'm skipping over the sharpening and film grain. These are tools that have been inside of ON1, and there's really not much to tell you about that. But actually, let me back up. Before we go out of here, let's go to the generation section. The generations section is kind of cool and it's interesting because what I can do is maybe I want to change this to a different type of day. All right. So right now it's kind of at a sunset period. But maybe I want to make this like a warm sunset because this sky is just not very interesting. All right. And so let's just go warm sunset. Yeah, we'll just say warm sunset. Okay. And then we're going to click on regenerate and see what happens. All right. I haven't rehearsed this. I haven't tried this. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's just going to give us a warm sunset. Okay. It gave us a warm sunset, but it really didn't do anything to the sky. And so I'm going to go warm sunset with a moody sky. And then I'm going to hit regenerate. Now, what's cool here, and I just noticed this, inside of the generations, yeah, there we go. We got a nice little moody sky there. Inside of the generation section, you get a few different versions here. And so if you want to experiment a little bit, because there's no tokens, then you can kind of just make up whatever you want. What I will say, however, is if you are going to go this route, as far as playing with different versions of the generation section, you may want to make everything in one line of text. All right. So let's say I want this to, and I really do like this warm sunset look. I think that this has actually helped restore the file. It does look a little AI-ish all over in this section, but you know, I'm experimenting with this. Again, haven't tested this out. But let's go ahead and add another line in here. And I'm going to say remove the flower in the foreground. And I didn't spell foreground correctly. There we go. Let's go ahead and see what happens. And when, just so you know, I'm talking about this big thing right here. Like it's there. I want that to be out of the way. And look at that. It's gone. And I still retain this sunset with a moody sky. And so that's the power that we're starting to get with being able to send our images off to the cloud. Again, you'll have to make a decision on if that's something you feel comfortable with doing. I will not make any comment if that is good, bad, indifferent. It's just the way that this tool works. You do have to send it off to the cloud, and these are the results that you can get. So maybe Restore AI is the introduction to generative fill, or a generative replace type of tool that we've seen in other photo editors. I will note though, as I jump through these different versions of the AI generation, I'm losing more and more detail in the image. And so I would probably be careful with the amount of generations you do, unless I'm doing something wrong here. But that is something I just noticed. All right. So now that we kind of touched on the generations aspect here, let's go ahead and click the blue check mark. And that gives us our export dialog box. Now, if you are a person who works on single images using ON1 Photo RAW, then this box is going to be very familiar to you in most cases. But if not, maybe you use ON1 as your digital asset manager, like I do. And that just means you navigate to your images, you open them in edit, and then you have to use the export module to export your image. Well, because this is being processed on the cloud, we are creating a new image, right? And so you have to tell ON1 what you want to export from the cloud, because think of this image like we are in a portal logged into a server somewhere at the ON1 cyberspace location. All right. We'll just say it like that. And now we have to tell that cyberspace location, I want to put this back on my hard drive. What type of file do you want to put back on your hard drive? And so, or where do you want to put it first? And I always recommend just keep it same folder as original. That's what I've been doing. And I think that that's going to work the best. And then you get to rename the file. By default, it just uses the file name and then Restore AI. And then it's dot whatever the file type is. And so that brings us to the file type section. It is a collapsible section, so make sure that if you don't see it, you click on file type to expand it. And then you can click on the TIFF or the file format. Right now, I have it set to TIFF, but you can change it to whatever you want. So maybe I want to export it as a JPEG. So I click JPEG, and this looks, again, very familiar to those who use the export window or the single file, and you need to save your work. With that being said, you'll notice that it gives you an estimated format, estimated file size. So just pay attention to that, especially when you start adding things into your hard drive, be it your local hard drive or an external hard drive. But you'll see that we have TIFF, JPEG, JXL, PNG, DNG, which for those who don't know, that is a raw file format. And so I haven't, you know what, we're going to test it out. We put this in as a raw file. Let's see if we get a raw file in true form coming back to us. Now, the last portion of the export that we'll cover is the after saving. And so this is essentially after ON1 saves your file to a JPEG, a TIFF, PNG, DNG, whatever you choose in the location that you chose, what do you want ON1 to do with it? Do you want it to do nothing, which is the initial option? Or do you want to jump back into browse and have that particular image selected? Do you want to jump into develop, local, all of these places makes pretty much makes sense. And then there's this new one, which is home. And again, we haven't covered the home screen yet. We will in a little bit. But for right now, I'm just going to tell it to do nothing. And I'm going to hit save. And so ON1 is going to go ahead and save out this image. Again, it's coming from the cloud, going back to my external hard drive where I have the original file saved, and it is going to create this image right here. Now, again, this image, it does look a little AI-ish. I'm not going to lie. But you know, it's the first iteration of this tool. And so I think everyone is going to get different results, especially based off of what you are providing to the cloud to work with. The better the source, I think the better the result, but time will tell. And so we're going to let this go ahead and generate. And once it saves, it should back us out to the browse module. And then I know that it went to that original folder. I am just not in the original folder because I created an album to work off of. But that particular image did go back to the original folder. And if you were there, then that's where you would end up. For the sake of today's live stream, for the sake of today's live stream, I'm not going to go navigate back to that folder because I want to touch on the next aspect of the restore. And so this is a real life scenario. My wife, she photographed her sister's 5th grade graduation, getting ready to go into middle school. And these are photos that there was only, like, she was the only one in the family that was there who had a camera. And for whatever reason, it was set to an improper white balance. She gave it to me. She said, "Chris, can you fix it?" And let me just show you one of the photos here. And you can see it's a very blue white balance. Now, a restoration tool, I believe, is prime for this type of image. Like, ultimately, this was a photo that has been used for years, but this photo, it was captured back in 2008. All right. So we're talking almost 2 decades ago, this image was captured, and there was no fixing it until now, or at least I hope so. So we're going to go ahead and come down to the Restore AI and click on this tool. And this is one of those use cases where I think that a restore tool is absolutely helpful, especially when you don't want to look like it was shot under a blue filter, right? Because this isn't a very cool look, no pun intended. It's a pretty cool photo as far as the temperature value goes. But we probably want to see this back to some original colors. And so having a tool where we can send this off to the cloud, let it look at it, and hopefully fix the white balance, because that's all that really needs to be corrected on this image. I don't need it to do anything more. And so if it tries to recover faces, which I noticed that I have face recovery turned on, I'm just going to turn that off because I don't need it to recover faces. And that's probably why this is taking so long. And I'm a little nervous. Okay, so let's see here. It says your internet connection may be offline or the server may be temporarily unavailable. All right, so let me hit cancel. And I'm going to hit restore and turn off the face recovery. Of course, it's not going to let me do that. And so maybe we'll have to wait. But, you know, this could be a telltale sign. everyone's getting access to this and they're going on to download it and they're starting to use this. Maybe it's just getting overwhelmed, but it looks like it's working on that face recovery right now. So hopefully we're going to get a result here and then we'll see if this is good. And there it is. I like it. I don't need the face recovery like I mentioned, so I'm just going to turn that off because the faces were fine. And you can actually see, like if you click on it and turn it off and turn it back on, it didn't change too much of the facial features of the people in the photo. It definitely corrected some things, but they still look like they did initially. And so this is one of those photos where maybe it's okay to leave the facial correction as it is, but I don't need it. So I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to pull up on the color correction because that's ultimately what I wanted for this image. And so I'm just going to pull this to the right until I get it to a point where I think it makes the most sense. And this is where I think I would prefer it. So here it is before with the blue overcast. Again, this was a JPEG, so I couldn't fix the white balance. And here it is without that blue color cast or white balance. That's all jacked up. All right. And then, of course, if I thought maybe the tones were off a little bit of the image, I can just pull this over to the right and adjust the tones in the photo. And then if I thought, you know what, maybe it needs to be just a little bit warmer, this is where that warmth slider really does come in handy. And so I can increase the warmth here to about there. And I think that that would be a very good render for this image. All right. And then I'll just hit the blue check mark and I'm going to leave this all as it is. And this time I'm just going to spit it back as a JPEG because there's no sense in trying to create a DNG from a JPEG file or a file that was initially a JPEG. That just doesn't make sense. So I'll just save it back as a JPEG and all should be well. And then I'm just going to, for the demonstration's sake, show you the develop or send it back into a develop module and I'll hit save. And so ON1 is going to do its thing. And why does it look like it did something with the faces again? I don't know. Maybe it cleaned up the overall image. The faces, I didn't want it to recover faces, but for some reason it looks like it did. I'm not a huge fan of that as far as what it brought back. But nonetheless, this is one of those tools. You got to play with it and see how well it will work for you as a photo editor. But hopefully when it goes into develop, it's not going to look like that. But yep, it did. So at least the color cast is gone. I'll have to figure out how to keep that face recovery thing turned off because I didn't need it for this image. Like the faces, in my opinion, were good enough for what I needed this image to do. All right. And so we'll go ahead and just hit the X on that because I don't really need that version. And that brings us to this screen right here. All right. We're jumping away from Restore AI and going to the second new feature that's inside of the 2026.4 version of ON1, and that is the home screen. Now, at first glance, it looks a little convoluted, maybe even a little bit complex, but it's really just broken down into what I would say 4 different sections. Right. So the top portion here is, hey, what the heck do you want to do inside of ON1 when it comes from a file management standpoint? Do you want to open a single file? Well, drag and drop or click open and navigate to where that file is on your hard drive or wherever it is. Or do you want to go to the browse module? This is the normal browse that we've been used to inside of ON1 for however long you've been using ON1 because there was never a home screen before. And then you have an import button here. Now, the import button is really cool because uh, it's not really importing into ON1. It's just ON1 letting you bring files from your SD card into a, I guess, an organization tool where you can rename files and add keywords and do some really cool stuff, change metadata, all that good stuff. But it's really just pulling it off the SD card and saving it to an external hard drive for you, because ON1 does not need you to import files. And so I don't know what else you could call this, but you're not really importing images into ON1. And I want to make that clear because that's a big question that people ask. And I just imagine that now coming to this home screen and they see this thing that looks like an SD card and it says import from device. And now they think this is like Lightroom where you have to import images into a catalog. That's not how ON1 works. That's not the file management system that ON1 has. So you don't have to worry about that. All right. Please don't worry about that. But then we come over here to this second section, which, takes up a pretty good amount of real estate on the screen. And this is the welcome section, or the news and tips section. Now, what I like about this is you could hide it. All right. And then you end up with just the three primary sections that I think everyone probably will need access to. But let's go ahead and unhide it for a second, because I think for those of you who are looking to stay up to date with what's going on with ON1 and videos that they're releasing and things of that sort, without having to go to YouTube and kind of like just search through everything, well, this tab allows you to kind of navigate through the most recent things that ON1 has. Now, if you are a Plus member and you don't use your Plus membership perks, if you will, I think that this is going to be a great way for you to keep up with the stuff that's helpful to help you learn better how to use the software. Now, if you have not signed up for ON1 Plus, I do recommend that you give it a try. At least try it out for a month, see if it's something that you like. And if it isn't, then okay, but at least you know. And I will say, the ON1 Plus membership, it really is a great resource. All right. And so if you are a standalone purchaser, then you can go and subscribe to ON1 Plus. You can use the coupon code FreeWillPhotos20 if you want to save a little bit of money when you're signing up for that. But, just know that that is an affiliate coupon. I do make a commission off of it, but that's at no extra cost to you. And so I would love to be able to, help you get into the Plus membership if that's something you are looking for, where there's training and assets and all kinds of really, really good resources for ON1 users specifically. All right. And then you have some other tabs here, things that ON1 wants to make you aware of. But again, if you feel like this is too much, you're like, you know what, Chris, I don't need any of that information, you can just come over here, click hide news tips, and now you just get this bigger home page. All right. Now we'll move down here to the second column, or second row, I should say. And this is where your recent folders and albums are, the things that you've navigated to recently. And you can see all of the things that I've navigated to here recently. One of those being the album, where I was just showing you the images for Restore AI that I've been working off of, as well as some other locations that I have navigated to. Now, let me get my big head out of the way. Let's go screen only. And that didn't work. So I'm just going to click it over here. There we go. And so the last section here is going to be the images that you recently opened inside of Develop or inside of Edit or Effects or whatever. All right. That's what's down here. But one of my favorite things that On1 has added, and this is going to change the way that I even approach the Free Will Photos membership perks, or Free Will Photos Academy membership perks. By the way, if you want to sign up for that, a link is found in the description box below, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. You get practice files now. Now, these are files that I think I'm going to start using for the content here on the channel, because what you can do, I'm just going to go ahead and open up this file here. And I just double clicked it, by the way, to open it. It brings it into develop. If you struggle with having raw images to work off of, or whatever it may be, well, now On1 is giving you resources that you can open up and start working with, so you can shape your own editing techniques and styles, especially if there's a genre of photography that maybe you struggle with getting assets for or images for to actually start editing. Well, On1 is now giving some of those assets to you, and I think that this is going to be huge. The way that I plan to personally use this is to start making content based off of the reference files that are going to be inside of the 2026.4 home screen. All right. And so that way everyone just has access to it. You can follow along, things of that sort. Now, of course, if you don't have the 2026.4 version of On1, then now is a great time to go and purchase it. Again, you can use the coupon code FreeWillPhotos20 to save a little bit of money when you check out. That is an affiliate link or affiliate coupon. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm not trying to hide anything. I am an affiliate for ON1 Photo RAW, but I'm also a true user of ON1. This is my primary photo editing software. I recommend it to everyone because I think it is the software that is for everyone. But it is, or everyone can use it, but it's not always for everyone based off of the workflow that you want to go with. So let's go ahead and jump back to that home screen. So the way that I got there the last time was after closing out the develop workspace, and then it took me to the home screen. Well, if you look over here on the left tool well, at the very top, you now have a home button. Don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but when you click it, it brings you back to the home screen. Now, the last thing that could go missed on the home screen, and the main reason why I want to call it out is because I don't want it to be missed. But if you have feedback that you want to give to On1, previously you used to have to go to the ON1 Photo RAW forum, and that kind of did its own thing and didn't work the way that I think most people expected it to do. I think that's still a thing, but what you can do now is just click on this submit feedback form. And when you click on the submit feedback form, you get this thing right here. Let me just minimize that. There we go. You get this page right here where you can fill out all of the information and submit your feedback directly to the team over at ON1. Now, is this, as crowd friendly or crowdsourced as the other forum page that I was mentioning? No, but it's still a great way of saying, hey, here's what I'm experiencing with ON1 issues that you're having, technical issues. All right. But also if there's something where you're like, hey, I think that this could be, or exactly what it says, product feedback, right? You hit this little drop down and you get a few items here. But this is a way that you can start interacting with the ON1 team and get your voice heard. So I'm really excited that they incorporated that, because a lot of people have asked me in the past, Chris, I need to get a hold of ON1. How do I do it? And now It's as simple as click the home button. Well, one, download and install 2026.4, assuming that you're not working on any major projects. Finish all of your major projects first, especially if you're a professional. I shouldn't have to express that, but if you are a professional, finish all of your projects that you need ON1 for first, because I'm not saying that this isn't I'm not saying this is an unstable version of ON1, but it is a new release, and new releases are always subject to some challenges sometimes. And so if you're in the middle of a project, you don't want the software that you're using to crash on you or whatever it may be. So finish what you need to do and then jump over into 2026.4. You can hit the home screen and then you can come down here to submit feedback if you got feedback. And so that is the so what to all of that. Now, we'll take a quick break from the screen, and I just kind of want to share some of my thoughts about where we're headed with ON1 Photo RAW. So previously I mentioned that the Max version, I wasn't necessarily recommending it to people based off of the fact that everything that you really need in ON1, it was coming in the base version. Now, if you're new to ON1 and you're wondering like, well, Chris, what are you talking about? Max version and the base version. Well, there are two versions of ON1 Photo RAW. There's the Max version, which is essentially all of the capability of ON1 that they're throwing. It's like the whole sink, kitchen sink, and whatever that analogy is. It's everything that ON1 is giving to the customer, to the user. Then you have the the standard version or the base version, which is all of the tools except for, and I guess I should clarify that. The ON1 Max version allows you to use ON1 as a plugin. So if you are working in programs like Affinity, Photoshop, or other programs that allow you to host plugins, well, ON1 would be read by that program as a plugin. Whereas the standalone version or the standard version, keep saying standalone, the standard version would not allow you to use it as a plugin. You would have to do a whole workaround. All right. So that was the first thing that was kind of separating the Max version from the standard version. But now the Restore AI, which is a new feature, it exists only in ON1 Photo RAW Max. So if you have the standard version, you're not going to see this new tool. And I want to be clear about that, or at least based off of the article. And from what I understand, only Max version holders are going to get access to Restore AI. That's another differentiator between the Max version and the standard version. And so it's almost starting to turn into the deluxe package versus the basic package. And you have to make a choice of which tools you really need. Now, I'm still a firm believer, at least in the current offerings between the Max and the standard version, 95% of the photographers who are looking to ON1 as their primary editor only need the base version or the standard version of ON1 Photo RAW, because you're going to get all of the capabilities of editing the images. You just miss out on, at this current moment, the ability to use Restore AI and to use ON1 as a plugin. All right. There may be some additional things that differentiates the Max version from the standard. And if you know what those are, by all means, drop them in the comment section. We can have a discussion about it. But what I think we're going to start seeing moving forward is the standard version is just going to get the standard tools, which again, I think is going to be great. However, for those who need a little bit more usability out of the software, we're going to start seeing the Max version get those higher tiered updates and even upgrades when newer versions are released, because we're starting down that path. Now, good, bad, and different. I don't think that it's a bad thing. I think that that's actually a smart choice, especially for people who, or for it's a smart business choice, right? Because On1 is a business, and I don't want to talk business, but that's a smart choice from the business perspective. But for the photo editor, now you get to make a decision of what you actually need. Do you need all of the top end tools, or can you do what you need to do with a standard set of tools? And there's nothing wrong with that, because On1 is a premium, in my opinion, a premium photo editing suite. There is so much that you can do with On1. All right. So that's my first, I guess, kind of soapboxy rant, if you will. I do want to jump back into the computer. So let's jump over here. And of course, if you got questions, leave them in the comment section. I am monitoring the comments while I'm live. But here inside of the computer, and let's go with, you know what? Let's go with a practice file, because that way, if you are using the max version, then you'll be able to follow along with this as well. So we'll open up this On1 sample 4.cr2. And so if I double click there to open that, I'm just going to go ahead and send that over to Restore. And the reason why I want to do this is because I have been thinking for a long time, how is On1 going to introduce generative tools into On1 to the great, or to the degree of like being able to type what you want the AI to do. And it's really hard to, I guess, offer that when all of the AI components work local to the machine. And again, I want to reiterate, the only thing that's working in the cloud right now are the tools located inside of Restore AI. Everything else is working local to your machine. So Quick Mask AI, the new AI masking tools, the depth mask, luminosity mask, all of that stuff is working local to your machine. But when you click Restore AI, you are accessing the cloud in order to edit the image that you selected. Well, now with this generations thing, you can free text all of what you want inside of the image. And so I want to make this night. Let's go with nighttime starry sky. And there's nothing that I necessarily want to remove. So nighttime starry sky, we'll just start with that. And then let's click regenerate and see what happens with the sky. And of course, you can use, if you're using the standard version of On1, you still have Sky Swap AI. And so that's part of the thing, you know, but when you are using this tool here with the AI, it starts to remap the lighting conditions in a way that I think is a little bit more powerful than using the Sky Swap AI. All right. Because as I look over here on the generated thumbnail, obviously what I'm getting here in the center is based off of this faithful action. But as I increase the color, look at how that just transforms the photo. Now, again, I'm not sure why I'm getting this this really AI generated thing. It wasn't doing that before, and I'm not entirely certain what's going on there. But the point that I want to make here is you can really make some cool looking images. And for this particular photo, this probably wouldn't be too bad as like a background for a computer screen. So the use case of what you're trying to do with the photos, that's going to be taken into effect or to consideration. And I wish that it would have retained all of the basic structure that was in the photo and really just, kind of overlaid the night sky and turned this from a daytime photo to a nighttime photo. And, maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I still need to play with this. But the possibilities are starting to creep into On1 in order for us to use the AI tools that we see in other software. And now we're starting to get that here inside of On1. And so I think that is the so what to today's live stream is we are really starting to see On1's AI advance. And, this is the first iteration of working in the cloud. Again, you have to make a decision on if that's something that you would prefer or wouldn't prefer. Let me know about that in the comment section below. You know, so let me take a look here. We got a few comments. So we got NetTube user says, hello, great stream. Thanks for clarifying DxO Photolab versus Pure RAW. Oh, that went away a little bit faster than I wanted to. DxO site makes it confusing. Okay. Well, no worries. You're welcome. I'm glad I was able to help clear that up for you. So thank you for that. And then we have a response that was going to NetTuber. And it looks like Stephen was just explaining that you should get both essentially. And again, this is more a discussion about On1, but I am a photo user of multiple applications, and I would suggest that you download trials. I think this goes with everything. Download a trial version of the software first. And then after you've used the trial version, make a decision if it's something that's going to be beneficial for you. Now, that's not like earth shattering advice or information. But that's something that I think everyone should do for themselves because your computer plays a huge factor into the software that you are going to be able to use. Your, I guess, ability or your tolerance to learn a program is also going to play a factor. Some programs are just going to work easier for you because it fits your overall need. Oh, okay. So NetTube user, he said that he meant to speak about, or he was saying On1. And so, yeah, hey, I'm always happy to help clarify things. But for all programs, right? Not just On1, because I do like to help people find the right software that fits their photo editing needs. But when it comes to On1, I highly, highly recommend that you download a version of it. Now, I see another question here from NetTube user about, do you think DxO is better than Photoshop and Luminar Neo when it comes to masking and adjusting skies, since DxO doesn't have a real sky replacement tool? Yeah, no need to apologize. I misinterpreted, but all is well. Here's what I would say about this question on DxO being better than Photoshop and Luminar, and really I think you meant On1 here, but On1 is a great tool. All right, and it is a user-friendly tool once you give it the time to actually understand it at its core. All right, The first time that you open On1, it can be a little overwhelming. I fully understand that, especially if you're coming from a program like Lightroom. Um, but to the question, which one is better sky replacement wise? That's a very subjective thing. I think that both tools, Luminar and On1, offer their own, um, I guess, their own benefit. I am partial to On1 primarily because it works with a layer based workflow that I'm familiar with, but that's just a me thing. I also like the structure that comes with On1 overall. It fits my overall workflow. Luminar is a great program, and I do recommend it to a lot of people, especially people who are just looking for something where they can click it and it's going to give them great results with little to no effort. And they really like the slider aspect and they don't want to do a whole lot of masking, things like that, right? Luminar is going to be a great software in that regard, but I would say I lean towards using On1. But I also want to preface all of what I just said with I don't do a whole lot of sky replacement in my own personal work. So I hope that answers the question, NetTube user. But if not, by all means, please tell me that it did not answer the question, and I'll be happy to help clarify any aspects that you need a little bit more clarity on. Um, let's see. Steven says, I don't know about Photoshop as I stopped using it years ago. I like On1 because it gives you the option to add your own photos as the sky, not just someone else's image or a AI generated image. Yeah, I was saying a little bit of the same there, Steven. So thank you for that response in the comments because I agree. It is one of those things where being able to use your own skies, which again, I don't do a whole lot of sky replacements, but being able to use your own images as the sky replacement is always going to be helpful, I think. Um, so, yeah. Well, thank you, NetTube user. I appreciate your questions. And that's why I do this particular channel. I want to help answer questions from less of a salesy way because every product has a marketing team and there's nothing wrong with the marketing teams. They're actually all phenomenal. I've talked to the marketing teams at pretty much all of the major softwares and they really do want people to enjoy the software. But I want to help you find the program that's going to fit your needs and your requirements. And something that you're going to enjoy using because it's pointless to have a software that you dread opening because you're like, I don't even know how to use this thing. And again, that's the reason why I do recommend people look into the On1 Plus membership. It is probably one of the best resources that doesn't get talked about enough because I personally don't talk about it as much as I probably should, but it is a great resource for those who are looking for information about using On1 Photo RAW. Steven says, to me, they need to improve the AI for making the mask. Sometimes the mask can have a halo effect as the feathering blending isn't quite right. Yeah. And so that's a good point, Steven. Um, every edit is going to be a little bit different and every mask is going to render a little bit different. There are ways of correcting it. And I'll definitely have to make that its own stream because I can't necessarily showcase it. Actually, you know what? We are going to jump into that. Oh, I lost my chat. Give me a second. Because I think that is a common thing that a lot of people are facing when it comes to editing inside of ON1. And so let's jump back over here to the computer, and I'm going to open this image and edit. This is the reference file. So we're about to go into an edit using ON1, and particularly we are going to replace a sky. All right. So if you're not familiar, let me just get some screen real estate here. We're going to come over here to the right side, and I have the sky module, the second to last in my own personal workflow. You can move these things around by clicking and dragging. So if I want sky to be the first thing that I do, it'll go here. It doesn't change the actual way that ON1 uses or it doesn't change the way that ON1 applies effects to your image, but it does help with your own personal workflow. All that being said, let's click on sky, and we're going to let this load in. And then we are going to change this over to just a preset. And so that's going to be this night preset. And what I showcased earlier with Restore AI was the ability that when you apply a new sky, it usually needs to match your foreground. And right now, this new sky is not really matching the foreground. All it's doing is changing the sky, and then the foreground, especially down here, is unchanged. Now, ON1 does give us the ability to come into foreground lighting, and we can pull the distance down a little bit further. But that's as far as the foreground change goes, and it doesn't look like it really fits. And so that was the benefit of using the Restore AI as opposed to using the sky replacement. However, the concern that Steven brought up was along the edge of the mask, you start to get like these halos. And interestingly enough, I'm not seeing any on this image. I thought that I would get that with the sky replacement here, but it looks like it did a really good job on this photo. And so that goes back to my point that not every edit is going to have that challenge. Not every photo is going to present that challenge where you have those halos going around the edges of the selection that's being made. But I do want to show how you can kind of clean that up. Even though this photo doesn't have it, I want to show you how you can clean it up. And then I do see some comments that I will get to here in a second. So I'm going to click on I have my masking properties open, and I'm going to click on the sky mask here. And I'm just going to come to the 3-line menu and click refine. Now that brings us to this dialog box here that a lot of people don't know exist. And this dialog box, it used to be like in the original properties, it was just always available as far as the feather, the levels, and then you had a window tool. Well, now what you can do, if I press the letter O to look at the mask, and I mean, this really is just a great blend into the photo. Like it really did a good job. All right. However, if I need to kind of refine the edge here, I can come into levels, and I don't think it's going to do it for me on this one. Give me 1 second. Let me come over to the target mask and play with the levels. Yeah, it's not even going to allow me to really work this. Because again, the issue with this particular image is not the edges of the mask. It actually did a really good job. So there's not much to clean up on this. But what is cool is you get this shift edge tool, and this can help to clean up some of those weird halo effects. And so because we're already going down this adventure, I want to go and make one, and I know exactly how I can do that. So I'm going to click home, And I'm going to open up this picture of this bird here. And I'm going to go into local. I'm going to click subject, or I'm sorry, background. And hopefully it's going to make a mask around the subject. So press the letter O. Did a pretty good job at making a mask around the subject. And so now if I lower, and even this did a pretty good job overall, like I'm not getting those halos. So this could be one of two things. 2026.4, the masking got better. But if you did have the halo, what you can do is come up to the target mask, hit the 3-line menu, click refine, and you can shift the edge on that mask. Sometimes what you'll find is as you bring the edge a little bit more into the subject, then that feather works a little bit better. And then pretty much all of the AI masks can use a little bit of feathering. And so you don't want to feather it too much because then that just doesn't look realistic. But, you know, maybe 1 to 10 points of feather won't hurt with making that transition from the adjustment into the background. But yeah, I guess I thought this was going to be a great image to showcase that, because typically you start to get like the halos around the subject. I guess there's some halos here, but that just gets cleaned up with a brush. But typically whenever you make something darker around a subject that's being cut out, then you can start to see those halos. But that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. And so I see that Steven says sometimes you have to really zoom in to see it, but it's something the stock libraries can pick up on and failure image. Okay. So it sounds like Steven is submitting his images to stock libraries, which I don't have much experience with, I'll be honest. But that is a good reason to want to fix that issue. And so I completely understand where you're coming from with this, Stephen. Another way that you can fix this is with the refine tool. I would love to see ON1 kind of fix their refine tools. And so let me come over here to the mask, and that's in the left tool well. I just clicked on the mask tool. And then up at the top in the options bar, if I click the drop down, there's like a really, really faint line. I don't know if it's coming up on the stream, but nonetheless, the last 3 tools, a lot of people either don't know these exist or we forget about them. But there is the chisel tool, or these are all refine tools, and they just help with the edges of a mask. But the chisel tool is kind of like a pixel based tool. And if you're familiar with Photoshop, where there's expand a selection or contract a selection, that's essentially what the chisel tool allows you to do. But let me show you in practice. So I'm going to press the letter O, so that way we can see the overlay here. And then I'm actually going to zoom in just a bit. So we'll go like that. I want you to watch what happens to the edge of the bird here. When I double click on the chisel tool, you can see that it shrunk a little bit. And if I double click again, it shrinks even more. And so this starts to bring your selection more into like a little bit tighter, right? So this would be like that contraction of a tool, or of a selection area. But then if you want to expand by a few pixels, and when I say a few pixels, I really mean the amount. And I am not even confident that this is working in pixels, by the way. I haven't really been able to find how the amount is really working. And so this is one of the reasons why I don't suggest the tool often, but it could help in a pinch. And so if I double click now that I have this set to remove, you'll see that it starts to expand that selection. And then I can double click again, And then if I press O, you can see this happening kind of in real time. And so the more that I apply this double click, you can start to see what Steven is probably referring to here is like this halo outline. All right. Now, I intentionally made this by using the chisel tool, but if I were to go in the opposite direction, it starts to go away. And that's ultimately what I wanted to showcase. Like, this could be a way of fixing that problem, especially combining this with a feather. All right. So hopefully that helps you out, Stephen. Give it a shot and see what happens, because it could be very, very helpful. All right. And I'm just coming back to the chat now. Let's see here. Here's a comment. I think I left off here. ON1 Photo RAW is brilliant when using it as an installed program, say on my MacBook. I do find these don't stay up on screen that long. I do find the app on an iPad is weaker. It does crash when trying to mask. Does anyone find the same? Yeah. So let me just jump back over here real quick. And that way I can pull this over. So, Paul, I am with you. I have tried to use the mobile app from ON1, and hopefully we see some improvements with that app. But on my iPhone, on my iPad, I run into issues with it often. And so I genuinely just stopped using it. I use a different program on my iPhone and on my iPad. And I am satisfied with it. It is now owned by Apple. It used to be owned by a different company. But it's called Pixelmator or Photomator. I'm sorry. I use Photomator when I'm editing on the go on my iPhone, or on my iPad. And I love it. It connects with my Apple Photos, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to manage my library as well as share images with the people that I'm trying to share with, because when I'm editing on my phone, I'm usually snapping a photo with the phone, and then it's like, hey, I want to do a little bit more of a robust edit, and then send it off to the people that I want to send it to, and then I have it in my camera roll. So super, super useful in that regard. But yeah, I do feel your pain with the ON1 mobile app. So hopefully we see some improvements with that. The next comment here, and I'm not even going to try to say the name, but here's the comment. Hi, really like your ON1 teaching. It seems that using the shadow slider in ON1 brightens the whole image and not just the shadows. Maybe I'm using it wrong or expecting other results. So yes and no. The shadow slider, the way that I understand the shadows to be picked up in ON1 is it is looking over the entire image, and based off of where you have your black point set, your shadow slider is going to have an impact with that. And so let me see if I can kind of mimic that, because I think that that is a fair question to ask. So let's go Command 0. We're going to jump back over to this, and I'm just going to get rid of that. So what you're mentioning here, and there's not much shadows that really need to be lifted in this particular image, but as I pull the shadow slider up, it's brightening the entire image, especially in the background, because if you look at the background, it's kind of in shadow. And so it feels like it's brightening the entire image, but it really is just targeting the shadows. And so if I come over to levels and we expand that, well, you'll notice I don't have a true dynamic range. And this is something that I think is extremely important to understand when it comes to photo editing. You want to have information spread across the histogram as much as possible. And the way that you do that is you set your black and your white points. So if I go ahead and grab this black point and I pull this further down, and that's about as far as I can get it, and I push this white point further up, one, I start off with a really good base contrast in the image. But two, if I look at the shadows now, I am just influencing shadows overall. And so, like, if you look at the brights on the back of the bird, they're not getting touched. But this image and many images in modern cameras, there are shadow details across areas where our eyes may not pick up on shadow detail. And so, one of the ways, if you find like, hey, this is just not giving me the look that I want, and I want to control shadows and only shadows, here's what I would recommend you do. Come over to local and add in a luminosity mask. All right. And then you can turn on the color overlay, and using the window slider, just go ahead and pull down from the brightest areas, and we'll just increase this color overlay so we can really see what's getting targeted with our mask. Just pull down on this window slider until you get into the range that you think your shadows, like the shadows that you really want to impact, are being located, all right, or being selected. Now, the way that I have my masking set up is I have it set to affected. And that means anywhere that I see this pinkish overlay, it's going to apply whatever adjustment that I put in that area. Now, right now, these are what I would call really harsh overall in the selection. And so I want to grab the feather slider on the luminosity mask and kind of fade that a little bit better across the image, right? Because I want my shadows that I'm going to be impacting to be a little bit more appropriate. And so now, if I go ahead and turn off the mask, I'm just going to press the letter O. If I come down here to my shadow slider and I lift the shadows, now I know that I'm only targeting the areas that I would intend to target in the photo. And if I go the opposite direction, the same thing holds true. So knowing how to combine the masks with the tools is really going to help you go a long way when it comes to editing inside of ON1. Because, you know, if you're not applying a mask, then you're kind of letting ON1 choose what it thinks the shadows are. And that may not be what you believe the shadows are. So hopefully that was helpful. But great question. I really do appreciate you asking that question. Okay, let's see here. We got some more. I really like this. You guys are hitting up the chat. I greatly appreciate that. All right. Let's see. NetTuber says, I do remember now that the ON1 team specifically announced that they are changing their approach to focus entirely on strengthening the foundation. So yes, that is very true. They are definitely strengthening the foundation, and I am here for that. I welcome it. I want them to continue to do that. Paul says, thanks, Will. Yeah, I've stopped using it also. I believe he was referring to the chisel tool or like the refine section. So, you know, I think that it's good to remember that it exists, but know when it's appropriate to go and grab it, or when it's a tool that's helpful to go and grab, because that section really does matter. And then NetTuber says they stated they are prioritizing performance, stability, and image quality by delivering steady, free monthly updates to their current version rather than just chasing new features. And yeah, ON1, I think they're doing a really good job at making that a thing. This is kind of the first release, I'll be honest, where it's a major release. Since the article came out, I want to say it was in February. So we're now in May. That's about a 3-month window, give or take. And so they're holding true to that. And we are getting the updates to the current version. And I think, like, since I've downloaded this new version 2026.4, I haven't had any issues with crashing. And I think the masking has gotten a little bit better, just because I was trying to replicate a little bit earlier what I was trying to show you with the haloing, and it just made a great selection. Like, that's not me trying to overhype the software. That's genuinely what happened. It made a great selection. So super grateful for that. Let's see here. NetTube user. So it looks like Steven just replied to NetTube user. And I can't say that they've been doing it for a while now, Steven. They've been doing a good job at communicating a little bit better with us as the users, but they have been doing better since February on delivering programs that are a little bit more stable for the greater community of ON1. I think the releases were really stable for Macs and for Apple users, especially if you were on the Apple Silicon chip. However, if you were on an Intel-based machine or if you were on a Windows-based machine, the mileage varied. And again, Windows machines are very, very unpredictable in specifications, based off of how people have their machines built. So, if you have a machine that doesn't have the capability of running ON1, and then you download the latest version that's going to require a little bit more resources, then you're going to get what you get with that. And again, I understand not wanting to go purchase a new computer for the sake of ON1, but that is why I always encourage people, maybe it's time to look into purchasing a Mac, because Apple has gotten more affordable in recent years. And again, I'm not trying to market Apple material, but Macs have gotten a little bit more affordable. So could be an opportunity that's awaiting. But let's see here. We have a comment. It says, is it as good as Aperty or Rebloom for portrait editing? So the answer is ON1 is great for portrait editing. It does a phenomenal job, but you as the user have to know how to use the tool in order to get the outcome. And that's not a bad thing. Whereas Aperty and Rebloom, they're really designed for you not really having to know photo retouching techniques as much because they're slider based. Rebloom is a phenomenal software. I use it on the portraits, like my professional headshots that I do from time to time. I use Rebloom as my skin retouching tool in line with Capture One. And Capture One now has a skin retouching tool, but I personally like to use Rebloom because I think I get a better result from Rebloom compared to Capture One. But in regards to, is ON1 better at portrait editing? I think you're going to have more flexibility to editing portraits in ON1, where Aperty and Rebloom, like Rebloom itself is really just skin retouching. And so I would say that Rebloom is always going to need to be in addition to a true raw photo processor. Whereas Aperty, it does have that portrait retouching, or like the skin retouching tools. And I've used Aperty on projects before and I love it. So I'm not trying to say that Aperty can't do it. In fact, if you wanted a portrait focused photo editor, I don't think that there is a better one on the market than Aperty. But know that if you invest into Aperty, you're really just investing into portrait editing. And I think that that's great. Like you're buying the tool. Oh, sorry. You're buying the tool that you need for your workflow, and Apperty does a great job. So I hope that answers the question. But I think On1 is going to give you more flexibility overall. So that is how I would say that. Um, and so we're going to keep coming down here. Let's see. Steven asked, has this version improved its layering? So like you want to combine two images, say an inside shot detailing an outside portion. So the answer to that is the layers has received some updates. The masking module or the masking engine that we have in 2026, you got to get used to it. It's not perfect, and but it is very, very powerful and has a ton of potential. And so when it comes to the layering aspect, I think that layers works the way that it always has inside of On1. It's just now, how do you combine that with the new masking tools that are available inside of On1? And so that's what I would recommend is you learn the masking. But yeah, I think that the layering is improved because of the masking. So, that's kind of a catch 22 because the masks, or I'm sorry, the layers have, in my opinion, been held back by the capability of the masking. But now with the new masking engine, I feel like layers has a little bit more energy in order to create compositions and composite images that you wouldn't be able to do in older versions of On1 without, some severe like patience with a brush going around edges and things of that sort. Let's see here. We got NetTube user. He says, this is fantastic. I think it just proves their seriousness and respect toward their clients. Yeah, I've talked, like I said, I've spoken with the On1 team. They really do care about getting a product into the hands of the users that is going to be useful. All right. They don't want to just give you a product. They want to give you a product that you can depend on and that you can rely on. And no product is going to be perfect. And that's kind of the challenge that I think many people face. They think like, oh, well, I bought this thing and it's just going to do everything that I want it to do. And no, it's not. It's really not. Like if you reached out to me and you said, Chris, I want to do heavy photo manipulation and compositing, I'm not even going to suggest On1 to you. I'm going to tell you, you need to look at Affinity Photo or Affinity now or Photoshop, because you need something. And I guess now Pixelmator, that's another software, but I still believe, in my personal opinion, that Affinity and Photoshop are better than Pixelmator. But those are the type of tools that I would push you towards because they're designed for heavy photo manipulation, layer-based workflows where you're like creating and stacking and going, overboard. But On1 is really designed more for the photographer who wants to polish a single image and make it look its absolute best. And then if that person is feeling a little froggy, they can use the layers to kind of expand upon their creativity or their creative thought. Or if they want to maybe add a unique type of border and they want to use layers to do that. That's kind of where the layers are designed inside of On1. So, yeah, great question. And I love that. So we got Mark here. He says, hope some of the Restore AI filters into Brilliance AI for offline use and non-Max users. Yeah. And that's an interesting point that you make there, Mark. I'm not sure if we're going to see the Restore AI come down from the max users, because again, this is something that's happening in the cloud, and the computing power that the Restore capabilities are using, you would either need to have a really specced out computer, which is going to cost upwards of like $4,000 to $5,000. And the market share of On1 users, I imagine, again, I do not, I'm not an employee of On1. I just understand, like my graduate degree is marketing and understanding market shares and things like that. Uh, the user base likely isn't going to have $5,000 and up machines that they're operating on. They're going to have, maybe at best a $2,500 machine. And those are for the people who are really dedicated. But a majority of the people who are using On1 are probably working on $1,000 or less machine. And, the price point obviously isn't the specification of a computer, but the price point does kind of paint the picture of how powerful a computer can be, because the more you spend, typically the higher grade components. And for the Restore AI tools that they're using, that's going to require some serious computing power. So right now, the way that I imagine the offset is happening, and again, I don't want to talk business, uh, the max license is, at the right price point in order for them to fund the server that they need to have in order for the user base to gain access to it. Um, so hopefully that helps answer the question for you there, Mark. But it would be interesting to see that if they can bring some of that computing power uh, onto the hard drive, like to the local machine. But I also think that it's a good way of On1 separating the difference between having the max version and the standard version. Because if you want the AI tools, then you know that you have to make the jump to max, at least the Restore AI, I should say. But if you say, I don't need the Restore AI, and for everyone who has the concern about, I don't want to pay for more of something that I'm not going to use, then I think that that's where we see the standard version really starting to rope in. So I think the good news is there's no subscription and there's no token limit. So you pay one time to purchase On1 Photo RAW Max, and you have access to it. And you even, if you have the standard version, I believe, don't quote me on this, I need to go do some research, there may be the opportunity for an upgrade price. So you don't even have to pay the full price to jump over to the max version. But again, don't quote me on that. I could be completely incorrect. What I do know is you can save a little bit of money using the coupon code FreeWillPhotos20. Shameless plug there, but it's just a way that you can save a little bit of money if you want to jump to the max version. All right. Let's see here. Paul says, I did complete a survey On1 sent out today regarding new AI culling tool. I don't use On1 to cull my images, so it will be interesting to see this in action, especially for macro images. Yeah. So here's the beauty of the culling tool, because I have used the culling tool that On1 has. It's a plugin for Lightroom, and it works great. Phenomenal. I've always asked, why has that not been included in On1? And I think that is a tool that, based off of my theory of if they want to separate max from standard, I feel like that is a tool that would be difficult to figure out where it goes, because it is such a powerful and useful aspect of the photography process that I think every photographer needs. And so I would personally not like to see them put it into just the max version. If they'd go with the AI culling into On1, I would love to see that in the standard version as well, because that's something every photographer needs, especially if you are a sports photographer and you come back with like thousands of images. Having something that can help just sift through those thousands of images and give you the ones that are most in focus is super helpful, because everyone needs that. But do you need all the AI stuff? Same thing if you're, just a casual photographer. You come back from a trip and you have 100 images. That could be a lot for someone to kind of sort through. Having an AI tool that allows you to do that, or that does it for you, I think will be helpful. So hopefully we see that come to On1 soon, and in a standard version, as well as the max version. NetTuber says, speaking of skin retouching, I use the Retouch for Me plugins, Heal and Dodge and Burn plugins. These Photoshop plugins are expensive, but they are truly the best on the market today. Yeah, I got no gripe with Retouch for Me. I do actually have a lot of the Retouch for Me plugins as well. The only reason I use Rebloom over Retouch for Me is it just works a little bit faster in my own workflow. But Retouch for Me is phenomenal. I really do enjoy it. And let's see here. What other questions do we have, or comments? Steven says the culling will be interesting for professionals that take hundreds of images per shot or per shoot. Biggest issue I have is the cataloging. It would also be nice to tell On1 which images or which image type to download. Yeah. So I think I touched on this a little bit, but you're right, Stephen. It would be good. Or cataloging is always difficult. It has been difficult since the dawn of just trying to organize files, because everyone views file organization differently, and everyone treats it differently. And then how do you build a software that, helps people with that? And so, yeah, that is its own thing. I have my own personal preference of how I like to organize and categorize my images and catalog them. But yeah, the big issue is always going to be cataloging. Now, as far as telling it which images to download, I think you're referring to essentially what Photo Mechanic allows you to do, where you plug an SD card into the computer and then you can kind of cull through it. I don't believe Photo Mechanic has an AI feature, but it does allow you to look through all of the images and then just give it a rating, and essentially pick the ones that you want to move from your SD card to your hard drive. Now, there is another program on the market. I used it very, very, for a very short period of time. It's called Generative, and it used to be a free program, and that's when I used it. Now it is a subscription based program. All right. Photo Mechanic is a one-time payment, but it is relatively pricey for what it does. It is, for me, or in my opinion, it's a little expensive for what it does. But Generative was free, and it did essentially the exact same thing and had some AI tools in it to help with that culling aspect. And so if you are looking for something like that and you're okay with, paying a subscription to get access to that, the Generative could be a good way of helping you with that cataloging. And it works. It works extremely well with On1. Like, when I say extremely well, I mean I would open up Generative. I would do all of my culling and tagging, or not tagging, but I guess it is tagging. Giving it a star rating, color tag, whatever it may be. And then when I was done, all I had to do was select the images, like, Control A or select all, and then click and drag into a folder in ON1. So I would literally create a folder on my hard drive, navigate to that inside of ON1. It would be empty. I would do all of my work inside of Generative, and then I would click and drag and just drop those images from the SD card into ON1, and it would download all of the images there. It was one of the best things. I loved it, but then they wanted a subscription and I wasn't okay with that. So I went ahead and jumped ship. Okay, let's see. Yeah, they were offering a discounted price to jump over to Max. So if that's something you're interested in, I think you can definitely look into that. And, I think we may see some sales coming up in some point. I don't know when, but, there could be some sales in the horizon. Steven says AI generating tags and description would be nice too. Well, ON1 does actually generate AI tags for us right now. That's a part of, I think that's actually in both the standard version and the max version. So if you're not familiar with that, let's just jump over to the computer and we're going to go to browse. And so right now I'm just on the reference images. This is just the folder of reference images that ON1 provides to us. And yeah, hopefully we'll see this grow a little bit. But with this, if you come over to the right column in the metadata section, you have AI keywords, and then you have this button that says scan. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit scan, and ON1 is going to look at this particular image. And this is right now the image of the bird here that I have selected. And you can see it starts generating all of these AI keywords. And so as far as generating the keywords, if I want to add this to the photo so that way it can be found later, I can just click the little left arrow here. And so we can go with, and I don't think the other ones really apply to this image, but now I have those keywords added to the photo. So it's not, we're not too far off from having that capability right now, because, it's there. Now, as far as tagging goes, I guess depending on what type of tag you're looking, maybe selecting yellow tags for sharp images or something like that, that would be part of that AI culling that I was mentioning earlier. So hopefully that comes sooner rather than later. But ultimately, we do have a lot of capability built into ON1 right now with the AI tools that it offers, as well as, where we are going. And hopefully, if that survey holds true and we see that, it'll be great. And so, sorry, I have terrible allergies. So let's go back to this. You just checked the ON1 website and there is a discount offer for upgrades. And so if you are on the standard version of ON1 and you want this Restore AI, you can definitely upgrade to the newer version using that discount offer. So, it's up to you. I am just here to bring you the best information that I can and what I understand, and then help you learn the usability of the tools overall. But there are upgrades that are available. And so if this is something that you are looking to jump into, then you can by all means do that. Now, I want to make sure that I am getting all of the notes because, believe it or not, I do have a notepad here, and there are things that I try to hit whenever I go live or teach a lesson. And so I think I actually covered everything that I intended to cover in today's video. Um, or at least in this live stream. And then I love the conversation that we've had here in the chat. We don't have this as often. So I think we're going to call it good. Been going for almost 2 hours here on the stream. And so I want to say thank you to everyone who came and hung out today. I really do want to hear your thoughts about using Photo RAW 2026.4, the max version, obviously, right now. I think in the standard version, you're going to have that home screen. So that is great. So, this is kind of like one of those releases where only certain users of ON1 are getting the update, but that's based off of the version of ON1 you decided to purchase. All right. There is a discount offer that is available right now. And you can also try using Freewolf Photos 20. That'll save you a little bit of money. It is an affiliate coupon, which means I make a commission from everyone who uses it, but it's at no extra charge to you. All right. And so if it doesn't work, then that's fine. At least you're still getting the discounted offer price that ON1 is giving. So take that for what it's worth. And I hope that it's something that is of service to you. So with that being said, I want to say thank you for everyone who is hanging out. And until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.